Hey everybody, this is Eric Cesal talking to you from Port-au-Prince, Haiti. If everything goes right, I'm speaking to AFH Auckland about our activities here in Haiti. Regan asked me to reach out to you guys and tell you a little bit about what we're doing here and the role of architecture in a post-disaster context. The best way that I can explain it really is by telling our own story a little bit. We got here on March 1st, roughly 6 weeks after the earthquake, and started lining up our programs. It's important to understand that in a post-disaster context, there's really two ways to approach it. There's two mentalities that operate. There's an aid mentality, which responds to disaster by addressing those most immediate mortal needs that exist, like passing out rice and tents and medicine and things like that. There's also a development mentality. And the development mentality believes that the best way to address a disaster is to prevent the next one. To put the country on its feet in a way that they can address their own disasters in the future. So development mentalities look at things like education, like building infrastructure, like building codes, and things like that. In the immediate aftermath of a disaster, it's absolutely necessary that the aid mentality really dominates, right? Because those needs are there. And in the week or 2 weeks or month after a disaster, it's not prudent always to be thinking about some of the longer term objectives in some sort of grand way. That has become the traditional pretext for arguing that architects have no place in disaster response. This is clearly something that we at Architecture for Humanity don't believe because of the special way that I think that we look at development. We believe that the earlier you start thinking about development, the better and faster your results come about. So we came down 6 weeks after the quake, but within 48 hours after the quake, headquarters had already formulated a plan in broad strokes about what disaster was going to look like and what our response and our position in it was going to be. Now, we didn't do that out of any sort of arrogance. It's not because we thought we had all the answers in the first 48 hours. No one does. We did it because we believe that in order to promote long-term development, you have to be there early, you have to be thinking, you have to be active. So that motivated a lot of our initial response. In terms of what you can do to help, I would encourage you to keep in mind that the humanity in Architecture for Humanity is much more important than the architecture. It's not that the architecture is unimportant, of course, but it's the humanity that is the motivator for what we do. I think the late 20th century architecture did a lot to make the case that architects don't have a role in disaster response or any other sort of social need. But Architecture for Humanity is what it is largely because of individuals like the folks on my team here and to folks in Auckland that are willing to stretch the definition of that word, architect, in order to make our profession into something more meaningful and relevant. So please, you have our support, and I can pass along my contact information via Regan. And if you have any sort of questions or like more specifics on advice, I'm always happy to answer them. And most of you might know Frederica Zip in our headquarters, who coordinates our chapters. She's also in a position to help. So please keep in touch, and we're there behind you. Take care.